Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yate Shas Toy Sazani in the Sitzit Kent, Sitche Kent, the Neshike, no cleany down also. Quadi or Kilgibi, gonna I'll see so go. I can't doubt it. A sheep in Yeque, Naha, a stay hall, the whole lago, and the cargo net, Yadale. I want to also welcome all listeners. The story I'm going to tell you, the next in Navajo is called Nahotetaha. Nahotetaha in English means a beggar. Someone that doesn't have a permanent job, someone that just wanders around begging for food, begging for this, begging for that. Well, this young Navajo was a beggar. He went from home to home asking for food, asking for whatever he needs. And people didn't like that. They tried to get him to live, to be self-sufficient, to take care of himself without begging. But he continued to do that. Eventually, his people disown him. They tell him, you can't live like that here. You cannot take care of yourself. We try to teach you. So he left. He started wandering out, trying to find another home or another place to do what he was doing, begging. He wandered into a village. This is a village of Pueblos. And there he started begging again. Begging for food, begging for this, begging for that. Eventually, the Pueblo people said, look, in order for us to take care of you, you have to do something. You have to work. So they had him do a few things, like chop the wood or bring in firewood. Whatever it is that need to be done, they made him do that in order to get food, in order to get something that he needs. Well, one day he had an experience. You know, if you're a member of a Pueblo tribe, like Hopi, Laguna, Zuni, you have stories, I'm sure. Your parents, your grandpas have stories like we did. Well, one of the things that the Hopi tribe, or maybe other Pueblo tribes, do is they collect eagles, mostly young baby eagles. And can you hear me okay? I hear noise. Okay? Okay. Anyway, they go out hunting to gather some eagles. Okay? And so they took this Navajo beggar with them because one of the methods of getting eagles was to pick up the young baby eagles. And normally, eagles nest right in the cave of a cliff. There's a huge cliff like this, and right down, halfway up, halfway down, they find a cage. And they go in there, and that's where they have their babies, baby eagles. And one of the ways in which these eagles are captured is they make a basket, and they put a person inside that basket, and they have a rope that comes down the cliff right up to where the cave is. And they ask that person to jump off into the cave, get the young eagles, put them in the basket, and then they'll pull those eagles up to the top, put them in another basket, and they'll bring that basket down again. So that person that got their baby eagles can get inside that basket and be pulled back up to the top. Very dangerous, because sometimes the rope that they use breaks and down you go. Well, they figured this beggar Navajo was expendable. So if something goes wrong with the basket or the rope, no loss. So they put the Navajo in the basket. They went down the cliff, let the rope down, even with the cave. He jumped off and saw baby eagles. And he heard a voice, this Navajo beggar. The voice says to him, "Don't touch those baby eagles. Don't put that baby eagle in the basket, because when they pull it up, they're not going to bring the basket back down for you. And when the mother and father eagles come back home, they'll see you in the cave with no babies. And this mother and father eagle will kill you. You're going to be gone." So, this Navajo beggar thought, well, maybe I should not put these babies in a basket, because I'm going to be gone. So, in the meantime, the Pueblo guys that brought the basket down for him kept yelling, "Put the babies in the basket." And the voice keeps telling him, "No, don't do that, don't do that." Finally, as the mother eagle and father eagle start coming back at the horizon, they pulled the basket back up, and the mother eagle and the father eagle came in, landed right in the cave, and saw this Navajo beggar inside the cave, right next to baby eagles. The mother and the father understood what was happening. So they thanked this Navajo beggar for saving their babies, and talked to the Navajo beggar, thanking him over and over. Eventually, the mother eagle and father eagle suggested, "Since you were so brave to save our babies, we want to take you to where the eagles live, the country of the eagles." So they pick up the babies and him, and they flew off. Eventually landed at a different place, up in the universe where eagles live. And they welcome him. The mother and father told all the eagles that were there how this Navajo, the beggar, good-for-nothing guy, saved the babies. So they all had a feast welcoming this Navajo beggar. The next day, the eagles went out. Late afternoon, many of them came back all bloody, to a horrible mess. Part of their feathers gone. Nahotetaha saw this and asked, "What happened?" The eagle leader told Nahotetaha that we have enemies out there, and we go to war every day trying to fight them, but they get the best of us. Many that went out this morning to battle are gone. They didn't come home. What's going on? as the beggar. The Eagles explain that out there are weeds that have sharp knives like razor edges. When we go out there to hunt, they all start coming at us like tumbleweeds. And we can't fly. And they get the best of us. And that's how we live today. It's horrible. So, this beggar Navajo was very sad because these Eagle people were very nice to him. So the next day, he said, I want to go out there with you and see if I can help somehow. So the next day, they went out. In the meantime, spiritual voice talking to him again, telling him that it's not safe. You can get cut up too, just like the eagles. And the only way you're going to save yourself and the eagles is to make a fire. So, Nahotataha, this young Navajo beggar, start a fire by using a stick and a rock and rubbing it like this real hard and start a flame. Put some weeds on it and some small sticks and get the fire going. Put more on it. And then a bigger fire. And then when all those tumbleweed like razor sharp weeds start coming in, some of them got fire, caught fire, and they start moving among each other. Eventually, all of them were burned, all gone. The eagles and Nahotataha came back and they celebrated, saying, "This is a great victory. We want to thank you for saving us. We like to teach you our ceremony, which is very sacred." So the eagles held a council, and they start teaching this young Navajo beggar, Nahotataha, one of their most sacred ceremony. Took several days to learn all the songs, to learn all the prayers. that went with that particular ceremony. Eventually, he then completely learned the ceremonies. And then he wanted to come home, back to earth. So the eagles brought him back down to earth, near present day what we call the Netra. That's where the original location of Navajos after they came to this fourth world. And when they brought him back down, he started looking for his family. Eventually found his family. And what he saw wasn't good at all. His family and others within the neighborhood were all afflicted badly with sores over their body. Some were dying. A horrible, pitiful situation that he saw. So, he told his family and all the others that he learned a ceremony that had prayers in it, songs, as well as herbs. So they all gathered, and he performed that ceremony 6 days and 6 nights. Got the herbs from the 4 sacred mountains. They all partake of those herbs. And then performed the ceremonies. 4 days after the ceremony, all those sores are gone. People got well. And they all love him. Cannot thank him enough for what he did for them. That was an official Navajo ceremonies way back in the early times. As a matter of fact, in every extended family, there would always be 1 or 2 medicine men. My grandfather was a medicine man. He's the one that told me the story. I'm giving you just a short outline of the story. If it's just told the way he knows it, the way he had recited, it's going to take days to really tell you all about it. But the summary is an outline is what I just told you. Now the taha and the ceremony that was created by this beggar, was referred to Yoe, the beat way. I checked within the last 20, 30 years, there's no medicine man that practices that. It's gone. But in the early times, it was one of the powerful ceremonies that was performed for various illnesses. Now, what's the moral of the story? Here's a beggar, good-for-nothing guy, young man. His people, his parents, relatives, all disown him. So he left. And came home one day and saved his people. I asked my granddaughter, Ava, when I told her this story, what's the moral of the story I just told you? Her first answer was, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, that's true. We have people who we may look down on, but remember that story, now Taha, how he became educated by doing things that are good, saving the eagle babies, the baby eagles, and got reward. And he used that reward not just for himself, but to save his entire nation. Most of the Navajo traditional stories, as I said earlier, have morals in it, something you learn. And the way the stories are structured, you cannot forget what you learn for the rest of your life. So that's one of the story I want to share with you. Yes, I guess I could sit here and tell you a story about Coyote who wanted to have pretty babies, children. He saw a deer followed by four of her babies, nicely spotted on the back, young deer. As they grow, they start with nice spots all over the top on the back. Until they get older, those spots disappear. But coyotes, being a coyote, stop the deer and ask the deer, how in the world did you get your baby so pretty with all those spots on the back? My, beautiful. Of course, the deer, mother deer, know that Coyote is a big copycat and doesn't really have that much contribution to make to society. So she told him, you know what I did? When they were born, very small, I put them in a cave, and I built a fire in front of them. And the sparks from that fire, sparks fly right into their back, and that's how they got those beautiful white spots on the back side of my kids. Well, sure enough, Coyote said, aha, I'm going to make my babies pretty. So he took his babies and put them in a cave, built a big fire, and sparks started flying all over. And his babies were yelling and screaming. And he said, don't cry and scream, my children. You're going to be pretty because I'm going to make you look pretty. Well, the end of the story is he lost all his babies. The moral of that story? Accept who you are. That's what the Great Spirit gave you. Love who you are and don't try to be like somebody else. You can make contribution to society the way you are. So, again, I say, thank you for listening, and I'm sure many of our elders can make significant contribution by telling their stories as well, especially those who are 80, 90 years of age, because not only did they hear it, but they lived it. Thank you. Hakone.